Impact Interview is sponsored by the Pocono Mountains, where small-town charm meets big adventures. Book your trip today by visiting PoconoMountains.com.
Welcome back. Our Impact Interview guest this week is one of the greatest ever to wear the blue and white. As a defensive tackle, he won the Maxwell Award in 1969 as the nation's best college football player, elected to the College Football Hall of Fame and College All-Century Team, multiple NFL All-Pro seasons with the Cincinnati Bengals. And here's where it gets interesting. He walked away from football to pursue a musical career, wrote over a dozen #1 country songs, and was elected to the Nashville Songwriters Hall of Fame. At some point, we have to actually ask him some questions. Mike Reid, thanks so much for joining us.
Oh, it's a delight. Boy, oh boy, you guys are dating yourselves. All that is so long ago. As I tell people, younger people, I say, yeah, we used to fold our helmets up and put them in our back pockets.
Well, we're going to shake you up for a little bit of memories for tonight. But the first thing we want to do is, Mike, we call this our Impact Interview. And so we want to talk about the impact that you've been able to have on your alma mater at Penn State, to be able to go work with musical and theater students and give back. And how much has that part of things meant to you to help people be successful off the field?
Well, whether or not I've done that or not is you'd have to ask them. I think essentially, it's about being motivated, moved to do things that you love. I haven't done much we all have to do things we'd rather not do, but I haven't done big things against my will. I loved, when I went and worked with the theater kids at Penn State. By the way, Penn State has the biggest musical theater program in the country of colleges. It's John Simpkinson runs it, and it's a fantastic program. And nothing like, being with young people to selfishly get yourself energized as well, So I love all things, I enjoy talking sports. I do talk football now when it's the season with friends. And I love all things art, music, poetry. I'm a product of Jay's dad. Jay's dad loved that. He loved that. He had players that had those kinds of interests in the world. So it's mostly, I really don't take any credit. I try to, the only thing I know more about than anyone else is my life, is my experience. And so I try to pass on what my experience has taught me and some of the pitfalls they might look for. But essentially, people, you go through your own life. You make your own mistakes and you correct them. That's how you learn. So I try to pass on whatever that was for me.
Mike, as you look back at Penn State football history, and I'm a great student of the history of it, you remain one of the gold standards for the true student-athlete renaissance man at Penn State. Now, during those undefeated seasons, you had some great teams, great teammates. Did you guys at that point understand that you were setting up something special that would last for generations to come? Or, if you didn't understand it, do you understand it now?
I don't think we did. No, I don't think we knew. We knew, your dad, we had the sense that we were under the gaze of an extraordinary man. I think we knew that. We were kids. Let's understand. It takes the human brain, a full 25 or 26 years to fully develop. So we were kids. Our brains weren't even all there yet. But I think we sensed, Jay, that we were in the presence of a different human being than we had encountered. And he inspired for me. Your dad inspired in the very best way. I lived in, and I think, Steve, we all felt this way. We lived in fear of Joe, but the fear was, I lived in fear of disappointing him. I couldn't bear the thought of disappointing him. So I would go to whatever lengths I needed to, preseason or off-season workouts, and I took his criticism. We all did, when he had that high pitched voice and he would get animated about things. That was great. That was great. But the big fear with your dad was I just did not want to disappoint him. I felt that way about my mother and father. I just never wanted to disappoint them.
Hey, Mike.
But Jay, to get back to your question, I think when you're in a moment like that, the beginning of his era, no, I think I would be lying to you if I said we were aware of what's going on. We kept winning. Penn State was coming off my sophomore year. We were 5-5. Wasn't a great year. So it began to it was like a snowball, that starts slowly and starts down a hill and gets bigger. And you're right about one thing, Jay. You see it in hindsight. I think you see it when you look back, but when you're in the middle of it, you're thinking about the present. Yeah.
Hey, Mike, you played football, wrestled, and starred in a campus musical during your time at Penn State. How much did growing up in Altoona and then going to Penn State prepare you for a successful life after football?
Success is an odd word. That's a really strange word. I think of experiences I've had, and I feel now as an old man, I feel depth of gratitude about the experience I had at Penn State. And I must tell you about the experience in the theater. I was Big Julie in Guys and Dolls. I was heartbroken. I had knee surgery, and back in those days when you had surgery, they put your whole leg in a cast. So I'm over in West Halls. I'm in a cast. I'm kind of bummed. Can't really do anything. The season's over for me. Redshirted, and I get a knock on the door, and to this day, I haven't seen her in years and years. It was Carol Solick. Now, Jay, you remember? I don't know if John was still refereeing. John Solick was still refereeing you on the sidelines, but that was John. Carol was John's daughter, and so somebody said that there's down the Commons, they want to meet you. So I went down, hobbled down, with my cast, and she stuck her hand out and she said, "Hi, Mike, my name's Carol Solick, and we're thespians." Now, this was 1967. So I remember thinking she and I still laugh about this. The first thought I had in my mind when she said we're thespians was, that's okay. I have no problem with that. You're right. That's how naive you are about things. But that remained among not only the bowl games, working with your dad, Jay, but that theater production remains one of the riveting experiences of my time at Penn State. I had the best time doing that. I don't remember the rest of your question. I kind of lost track, but I wanted to recount that because I had such a wonderful time, in that theater production.
Mike, I wanted to ask you about the NFL, the time in the NFL, and you're starting to make the switch in your mind to say, you know what, I don't know how long I'm going to have an NFL career. I'm going to switch to music or pursue that. But it's a violent game, and music, you need your hands, you need other things. Like, when did you start to make that transition, and how did you still compete in a violent game knowing what your next pursuit in life was going to be?
Well, I didn't necessarily know that, Todd. I say football breaks your body and music breaks your heart. So you could take your pick, No, I never, when I was, I got to tell you, I had such an amazing experience, and Hammer will tell you, and Steve Smear and all the Denny Oncotts under Joe at Penn State, that it was a difficult transition to the pros. My coach with the Bengals was Paul Brown, and it was kind of the end of, the end. Paul was very, very angry and somewhat bitter that Modell had fired him. And I think he was he was what I would call an Old Testament coach, but I never, so I went, and I was a first round draft pick, and people are always stunned at that, but they're more stunned when I tell them that I was the seventh kid drafted in the first round in my rookie year, and I signed for $22,000. And I thought, 22 grand, man, I might not ever have to work again. But I didn't necessarily, Todd, for one thing, if I had any gifts at all, was given anything, it was in sports. It certainly wasn't creative or in music. So I didn't think I'm going to stop doing this to pursue music. I just, as an old man, I look back and think maybe I should have played longer in the NFL. I had the, 4 or 5 knee surgeries. I had an arthritic, turned out to be a cracked vertebra in my back. And I was a small defensive tackle, even in those days. And certainly you have quarterbacks my size when I played in the NFL. My all pro years, I played about 247, 248. You certainly couldn't do that now. But I think to myself, maybe I should have played a little longer until I rehearse and remember reality. And the reality was I simply did not have another game in me. Emotionally, psychologically, it was a different day. Sums of money were different. It was the beginning of what we know to be pro football now is just the very beginning of that. And I was told by, I maybe shouldn't say this, who told me this and said, well, had I played longer, he believed that I would have had to gotten into the steroids because everyone got, I remember one year, Steelers weren't a very good football team. And man, my third year, we played them, and that was my third year, I think. They came out on the field. There was the same offensive lineman, and I thought, what weight program are these guys on? Man, they were huge, and they were the same guys. It was Ray Mansfield at center, who was taking over, and then Mike Webster. They were the very same guys that we played against, but they were monsters. And I found out years later, that was the beginning of the start of that. I would have had to have done that probably to remain competitive, but I don't know why. I don't know why. It was just seemed like it was the time to stop playing. Not necessarily, it was not the time to start music, but it was time to stop playing because, physical pain will wear you down. It just will. And look, Jay, I was never a tough guy. I never reported to be a tough guy, so physical pain will, that's why they go so easy on these quarterbacks now, because they know that those are the guys people want to see, and they don't want them getting beaten. Used to be able to, Tom, you remember, you used to be able to massage a quarterback a little bit, but you can't do that.
Well, speaking of teamwork, songwriting, obviously, well, maybe a lot of it's done individually, but when you get together to collaborate and put music together, there's a lot of teamwork involved. Which teamwork is more difficult? The teamwork it took to be successful in the football field, or when you get in a room with a bunch of musicians and you have to start putting arrangements and things together?
Well, first of all, the teamwork, I was under the under the eye of your dad, Jay. And then studio players, if you get in Nashville, I will say this about Nashville. I really believe that deep in my heart that the absolute best studio musicians, not in this country, but in the world, live in this town. When they get in, when you book them into a studio for a session, they know exactly what their job is. They will call on unbelievable amounts of talent to pull off unbelievable things, but it's within the framework of your song. They know what their job is. So it may take 3, 4, 5 passes, but the teamwork in a football, Jay, as a coach, that the teamwork on a football field is dependent on everyone doing their job. And I think it's very similar. It's interesting. No one's ever asked me this. I think it's very similar when you go into a studio with a group of musicians. Yeah, when they're great, as these guys and girls and women are here in this town, they know, they know my job. They know their job is to meet the off guard if it's a trap play.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, they know the equivalent of that. So they know the equivalent of a great guitar player knows the equivalent of running the absolute perfect pass route. So it's interesting you asked that, because I think they're more similar than they are different, and I've never thought of that till now. Yeah.
Hey, Mike, I told people we were going to have you on our show tonight, and they wanted me to ask you this question. Of all your accomplishments and accolades, which ones stand out the most to you?
Boy, Todd, I really want, is that Todd or is that Tom?
Tom.
Oh, Tom, you asked that?
Yeah, we're interchangeable on this show, though, Mike. It's okay.
No, you're two beautiful individuals. Tom, I don't want to dodge your question, and I don't want to seem, I have to say, and Jay, I don't know, and Tom, you guys, I don't know if you feel this. The past, it's not that I'm not interested. I don't really think much about it. I still, I find that I'm reasonably healthy. I get up and I work every day. I'm still engaged in what I might discover when I go over across the driveway into my little studio. And so I'm still engaged in that. I think that, looking back isn't okay. It's a moment you look back and appreciate. If I think of Tom, my accomplishments in life, I am filled with gratitude at the good fortune of the people that helped me with all that stuff, whatever it was I did, because nobody does any of this by themselves. So we had a great team when we were with Joe. I've collaborated with some wonderful writers, young writers. So I don't think about, one of my favorite, if I can, I hope this isn't a boring deal. One of my favorite stories is about the great, he's long gone now, Pablo Casals. At one point, he was considered the world's greatest cellist. The world's greatest cellist. Well, he lived to be an old man, and he was in his early 90s, and he was being interviewed. And, when you're now that's changed. Along comes great other young talent. But she's interviewing him, and that in his early 90s, and he informs her during the interview that at 92, he got up every morning and practiced. And she said, "Maestro, you're Casals. You got up every morning and practice. Why?" And he said, "Because I think I'm making progress." And I love that story. That's such an inspiring story for me, because I really do. I don't think there is a secret to life. I just don't think there is. But there are a couple of little nuggets when you think about them might get your butt up out of bed and to work on what's at hand for that day. If you're still engaged in this moment. So, Tom, I don't want to dodge your question. When I think of my accomplishments, I think of gratitude for those that helped, because I just, none of us do any of this alone. I've had more good fortune than a lot of people, than a man deserves to ask for. So I'll just answer that way, if that's okay.
Yeah. Mike, you said, you mentioned just the gratitude and moments. And I know you don't like to talk about the past, or not to talk about the past. I'm only going to take you back a little bit, because it's a special moment and a special person that has shown you stuff. The 50th anniversary celebration for Joe Paterno's first game, you wrote a song. We're curious as to what went into the thought process for that and what it meant to write a piece like that.
Well, Todd, I did, and I one never knows, writing a song can be sometimes, first of all, I go over there every morning and I start out by improvising on the piano for 3 to 5 minutes. And it reminds me to feel gratitude for a life in music. There's not a really I think it's not a process where I'm going to write this today. It's one never knows what will emerge, or there might be a phrase. There might be a phrase that comes to mind, and you think, that's a musical phrase. I wonder what the little move, and then you begin to feel an atmosphere and think about, can you see a little movie in this? That song started out from a phrase, and it became a song titled "Think of Me." So the next process would be, why would you say one? Then the next thing would be to ask yourself, why would someone say to another person, "Think of me"? I want you to think of me. Well, at the time, it was all the trouble that Joe was going through. And he was, you guys don't need me to tell you what that was. And I can't imagine what he might have been going through, because he was being attacked from many sides. I don't know what your dad thought, Jay, about all that, because I certainly didn't talk to him. But I guess what emerged eventually, the song became a song about when someone is at their lowest point. When someone is at their lowest point in life, I want you to think of me and all you did for me. All the wonderful things you did for so many people. Now, once I had that idea that I wanted the song to say that, then it's a matter of you roll up your sleeves, and it's what I call grunt work. You just keep moving words and melody around until the thing gets as close as you can get it to saying what you want to say. But that, I don't know if that answers your question, Todd. That's what that whole process was.
It certainly does. Certainly does. And we appreciate the insight into the process because, obviously you've been recognized with the Songwriters Hall of Fame. So I think that gives our viewers some real insight, Mike, into that creative process that you took for that. We really appreciate the time, guys. Is there anything else that you just wanted to say? Thanks, I think.
Thanks so much, Mike. This was great.
Mike, it was an honor to have you on the show. It really was.
Well, wow, you guys are very generous. I hope I didn't, I always make a promise to myself, I'm not going to yak. And right now I get a feeling like I broke that promise.
No.
So